Hello friends, and welcome to another episode of Economic Sutra on Sangsad TV. This episode is going to concentrate on the whole culture of startups that has emerged in India in the last few years and is really something that is generating so much energy in the youth of India. There's not so long ago when you would expect a young man or woman coming out of university, they would aspire maybe to join a civil service job or some sort of a established company. But more and more young people are going out there, taking risks, innovating, and trying to become job creators instead. And that is a really breath of fresh air. Now, what I'm going to do in this episode is speak to extraordinary young man who just when he was in his teens set up a company that has gone on to become one of the world's largest hotel companies. And afterwards we are going to go to Gujarat University, where we will look at an incubator in Gujarat University where a large number of young people are being incubated to do innovations, to set up new kinds of businesses and so on. So without further ado, let me turn to Ritesh. I've known him for some years, and welcome to the show. So what I'm going to do is start with you, Ritesh, a little bit about your journey, how you set up OYO, and why on earth did you even attempt to do this? Over to you, Ritesh.
Thank you so much for meeting me here today. I have, of course, had the good opportunity to know you over the years, and of course have followed your learnings from various discussions, both your books as well as television discussions. My name is Ritesh. I started OYO roughly 8 years ago. I grew up in a town called Rayagada in Odisha. As a young kid, I always wanted to do something different. So I started selling telecom SIM cards and all kinds of new things as a young kid because I always wanted to do something different. Long story short, right after my 12th grade, I was naive enough to think that I should set up a company of my own. I've spent 3 months staying in hotels, guest houses, holiday homes by writing to people saying, I want to do something in this industry. Can you please let me stay for free because I want to learn something? I learned that there was a big problem on one side for small hotels and homes to use technology and get higher revenue, to be available on the internet, get dynamic pricing and so on. And on the other side for customers to get a clean, good quality hotel at the right price point. For example, today we are here at the OYO Townhouse in Gurgaon. Getting a room here in this location, which is next to Galleria, for 1,000 to 1,500 rupees is potentially the problem statement that I was inspired by from the early days. And I'm happy that over the years, we now manage hundreds of thousands of these small hotels and homes around the world.
So how does a class 12 student, maybe has a great idea, get going? I mean, how do you even imagine that you're going to get going?
So I think this goes back to what you were just mentioning earlier, right? 6 or 7 years ago, maybe this was unlikely or it was rare. But today, whether you are in your 10th grade or your 12th grade or you're just out of university, whether you are in a little town in Odisha or Uttar Pradesh, or if you are in an urban center, the dream of building a company of your own is in everybody's mind. I'll tell you this story, Sanjeev, and I'll respond to your question specifically. I was speaking to one of our call center agents, and I asked him that, what is your aspiration over time? This is your first job. What do you want to do over time? He looks at me and says that the company that you have built, I want to build a company a little bit bigger than that. That's the ambition that young people in our country have today, and it has dramatically changed in the last few years. For me personally, how did I get started was very simple. A combination of 3 things. First, identifying the problem. I believe that a lot of people around me, whether it was my parents, relatives, everybody tried to convince me saying, wait for 4 years, get your college done, get a job, get a family, and then you can start up. And in my mind, once I got convinced about the problem statement, I just could not think about anything else. I felt like if I don't fix it, I'll not be able to do anything else more productively. Second, making sure that I convinced my first hotel owner and got some customers from them. Until you get the first customer, it's always an idea, right? But once you get the first paying customer,
some guy actually pays to do for whatever it is you're coming up with.
The validation is just unbelievable. And the last but not the least, which in my view is very crucial, is a very enabling environment around ourselves, right? Which is, I wanted to find people who wanted to come work with me. There were multiple startup incubators who were willing to introduce me to people. I wanted to set up a company. I have heard how challenging it used to be earlier. By the time I got started, you knew that in less than a month. Nowadays, I hear it's a few days. But back in my time, less than a month, a company could get started. Being able to make sure if you needed some support or guidance, you could reach out to mentors, angel investors for support. So there was an enabling ecosystem, which I think was very helpful to me. So I think a combination of these three things, combined with just this incessant hunger to try and make a difference, I think were probably the reasons
awesome.
to get started.
I'm so pleased you took that plunge. But now you've come a long way from that first customer. So give us a sense of how big is Oyo. I know it's not just an Indian company. It's got its tentacles all over the world.
So I think just to give a broad context, our company focuses on serving two people, right? On one side, we serve small hotels and homes. We give them 1.5 to 2x jump in their revenue and a software to manage their premises better, like I was just showing you. And for our customers, we give them trustable locations, right price, and if something goes wrong, great customer service. So globally, we have over 100 million customers who use Oyo. Last fiscal, we were the third most downloaded travel app in the world. And on our owner side, we serve around 157,000 small hotels and homes. And we lead in countries like that of India, Indonesia, Netherlands, Belgium, Denmark, Austria. These are the countries where Oyo has healthy market leading position. But the way we operate is, India is our base country. We build our softwares here and make it available around the world. So we simply call it Made in India, with love, but for the world. That's sort of how we like to operate our business.
Superb. So, one of the things that obviously strikes me is, why did this happen just in the last few years? I mean, true, there is an ideological shift that began happening starting with 1991. So there was a spreading of the idea that, entrepreneurship, risk-taking, etc. is a good thing. But why would this not have been possible, say, a decade ago or 15 years ago? And what has changed that has allowed this new culture to start?
So Sanjeev, I think the single word for that, there is a very popular saying among us at startups, which is culture eats strategy for breakfast. And I think that there is a very significant national level change that has happened in the culture of large populace of our country. For instance, today if you go from India's top university right down to a small liberal arts college, you will find that majority of the top students in the class want to become entrepreneurs. And I'll give you a personal example of that. When I started my company, my parents tried to convince me to say that I should wait it out before I get started. But in 2 or 3 years of building the business, on national television, the Startup India program was unveiled, as you may remember. Okay. And in that event, Honorable Prime Minister says that by listening to Ritesh, I feel like, why did I not start a hotel chain? I think for any parent after that to tell their children that don't pursue a startup and do something else, it completely changes, right? Suddenly, entrepreneurship and startup is not the choice of last resort, it's suddenly the choice of first resort. That combined with an enabling environment. Today, if you think about the number of incubators, there is absolutely no university or college I know, and I know that in our later segment of the program, you'll be talking about some of the great efforts at Gujarat University. There is absolutely no university you will not find incubators in. Capital is available like never before, right from the very early stage, where, not just angel investors and venture capital funds or SIDBI, but even entrepreneurs, right? Like somebody like me or other entrepreneurs, we all run different programs to support other startups to grow, because we've seen how exciting this is as a learning opportunity. And the last, but probably one of the most crucial, is just the regulatory process, how easy it has become, right? For the first time, you will see SaaS companies being built out of Chennai, Hyderabad, Gurgaon, being 90% revenue overseas. built in India, have our own brand. We're not just providing services and creating high margin value accretive efforts. So I think a combination of an environment where there are more people succeeding, a combination of a great universe of people around ourselves, where right from an early stage investment to late stage, as you can think, public offerings, increasingly you're seeing large Indian startups listing in India itself. And of course, a combination of a very high quality regulatory landscape for enabling this outcome. I think this is the reason why, if you look at the last 6 years, we've gone from 11 unicorns to 80, where, just this year, in like last month and a half, we've been able to add another tens of unicorns in our country. And I believe that this pace will only increase.
You're absolutely right. It's quite extraordinary how this has emerged. And of course, people talk about the unicorns because that's what grabs the headlines. But in fact, as mentioned in the economic survey that just came out, it is quite astounding. We compared maps of where startups were being set up. This is the DPIIT data. And we looked at a few years ago, just 5-6 years ago, where were the startups being set up? And, firstly, there were very few. And they were in the usual locations, Delhi NCR, something near Mumbai, Pune area, and there was a hub around Bangalore and Hyderabad. And that was pretty much it. What really stunned us is that the data that we have for April and December of 2021, i.e. the first 3 quarters of this financial year, this has just exploded out. There are 555 districts, basically almost all the districts of this country, which have at least one startup. And even the old hubs have just expanded out. So, the Delhi NCR hub has now expanded out into the area around Jaipur. You have one fairly large hub around Lucknow. So states that were historically not considered to be, entrepreneurial states like the Gangetic Plain states. I mean, Gujarat and so on were always entrepreneurial, but the Gangetic Plain states suddenly have lots of entrepreneurship happening here. So I think this is really, as you also mentioned, this is quite something. In addition, I would say that there is another thing which goes with the whole culture of startups. It's not just about business risk-taking. There is a culture of risk-taking that comes with it. So, you suddenly begin to see people, taking up sports as a career or writing as a career. So there's all this innovation that's happening in literature, in sports. So there's kind of I would say, a renaissance that happens because of this culture of risk-taking. And incidentally, it'll interest you to know, something like this also happened in the late 1400s and early 1500s in Europe. So if you go back to that period, it's quite extraordinary. The same countries that were going out and exploring the rest of the world were also writing new, interesting literature. They were also, of course, fighting wars as well. But they were doing all kinds of very energetic things. When you go to Venice or you go to Florence and you look at all the art, all of this is happening at the same time that Florence is, after all, a financial hub. Venice is, after all, a trading commercial hub. So all of this innovation happens basically at pretty much the same time. And it flows through to everything. So there is a link, by the way, in the fact that suddenly we are winning medals in the Olympics, or that a company like Oyo is being set up, or we are, suddenly thinking big in terms of, say, architecture. I mean, after centuries, we are thinking in terms of, building things in scale in places like Varanasi, the Kashi Vishwanath temple. So all of this is symptomatic in some ways of a new kind of thinking. Anyway, thank you very much, Ritesh. But what we are going to do before we let you off is if you can give us a tour of this particular facility, and that would be quite nice.
Absolutely, Sanjeev. But before that, I just want to reiterate what you mentioned. I grew up in Rayagada, right? Like, this is a town where nobody would have heard about startups. But recently I visited Rayagada. I visited Lucknow a couple of months back. And you're absolutely right. It's just not astounding that there are some startups there. These are becoming the hub of activity of sizable startups, creating significant jobs. And I believe fundamentally the JAM Trinity that we always talk about, I think it has truly enabled India to leapfrog quicker than anyone else. And because of internet and the exposure and technology that has come to the last mile in tier 5, tier 4 towns as well, people in India now are not okay being number 2 at all.
Absolutely.
We want to be number 1, and we want, like it is clear.
That confidence that we have suddenly have from somewhere we have suddenly imbibed.
So I think you should know that I and the entire startup ecosystem in India is not focusing just on the urban cities. We are focused on taking our high quality technologies and powering up the little villages, right? I was just telling you earlier, there is this village in Pahalgam in Jammu and Kashmir, or Kevadia in Gujarat, where we have tens of little village houses which have now become into holiday homes. And you'll find that people like Rajesh Bhai in Kevadia would be making more than 50,000 rupees a month just by using the same software that you saw here. So I believe that if you are meeting 5 years later, you'd see that startups today are already mainstream, but I think 5 years later, you'll see that the villages of India will also be powered by the technologies that new startups are creating. But so, let's give you a tour of the property.
Yes, let's do that. And I'm going to ask Ritesh Agarwal to give you a feel of what a OYO property is all about.
Thank you so much. Today we are at one of the OYOs near Galleria Market, less than 500 meters from there here in Gurgaon. This is one of them, but like these, globally, OYO services around 1,57,000 such properties.
So friends, I hope you got a flavor of how in just 8 years, OYO has gone from being a newbie to having become a world-spanning company. But of course, as I mentioned earlier, this is not just about one company. This is about a whole culture that is coming about across India and of course in our campuses. So I'm going to now take you over to Gujarat University, which has a wonderful incubator that is helping entrepreneurs, innovators to come out and set up their own thing. So let's head over to Gujarat University.
We are in the heart of the city of Ahmedabad, and we are inside the Gujarat University campus, standing in the innovation cluster of Gujarat University. This cluster is a group of facilities such as GeoSec on my right, which is a startup support system having co-working spaces, labs, prototyping facilities and various other facilities for startups to use for their prototyping and creation of new ideas. GeoSec has supported more than 400 startups that have been supported here. On my left is the Research Park. The Research Park is a wonderful concept that is bringing together industry and academia in one place. The Research Park is housing a variety of facilities inside the campus, allowing industry academic collaboration. One of the biggest challenges that faces India is bringing together industry and academia for development of skills, new innovations and knowledge. And we are trying to solve that through this innovation cluster that we've built in the Gujarat University.
We here has come up with a technology called bone conduction technology, and with this technology you can hear without your ears. So this is our product We Hear OX, which is a substitute of earphones and headphones, and as you can see, when you wear it, it doesn't go inside your ear. It doesn't use any part of your physical ears. So it sends directly sound to your brain, bypassing whole your physical ear system. So the advantage of that is, even if you use it for let's say 7-8 hours a day, it doesn't damage your ears, and it also gives you open ear experience. So as you can see, when I'm wearing the product, it's not covering my ears. So we are creating whole ecosystem. So it comes up with a mobile app. So mobile app has the features of customizing your audio. It has feature of controlling your device, but along with that it comes up with some unique features. So it comes up with an inbuilt 72 language translator. So with that you can communicate with any person in his own language. and it also comes with a learner language feature. So with this feature, you can learn the 72 languages, any of the 72 languages sitting at your home, and it gives it opens sea of opportunity for students who want to study in abroad. So these are some features of We Hear OX product, which is a product to prevent you from your future hearing loss, and along with that it gives you this many features.
We are a medical device company, startup incubated at Gujarat GUSEC and supported by Atal Innovation. We started our company in 2019, and it's been 2.5 years, and we have been growing really fast. We started with just two of us, me and Ravi, who is a co-founder, and now today we are 35 people and growing. We create a complete digital surgical plan through which we work very closely with surgeons to really understand what needs to happen in the surgery. Then using 3D printing, we create a physical 3D printed models. These printed models are used in the surgery. Then we create surgical guides and implants that are tailor made for that particular complex surgery. What we do is with these surgery support, we are able to reduce the surgery time. And one of the biggest advantages that we found that surgeon came to us and told us was, when I now go inside the surgery room, I am relaxed. I know exactly what needs to be done, and all I have to do now is execute what I had really planned with you guys. So it's really a big impact that we feel that we have been doing.
Altmat is an alternative materials company. So what does alternative materials mean then? So just like how oil and gas is one of the biggest polluters out there, and we needed alternative fuel to fight that, same goes for a lot of materials that goes around us. It could be your textiles. A lot of these materials that are used to make things are also hazardous, and we need to shift to better materials. And that's where we come in. What we do is we make alternative materials, and in the process of doing so, we essentially focus on bridging the gap between waste of today and materials of tomorrow. Well, we do have some samples out here to explain what I was just mentioning, which is, so you can consider something like this, which is pretty much a biomass of a crop, a left out part, let's say the stem or the leaves. So what we do is we kind of get them into these stages. Once it is in this stage, a series of processing happens on this, which leads to a cotton-like structure. So once it's a fiber format, you can kind of convert them into yarns on the existing infrastructure that the world has for textile. And these are the yarns of different kinds. You can blend it with different things. You can make it of different thickness. And depending on that, you can further apply them to different applications. If we talk about the execution of this technology, we do really focus on bringing scale and viability around this, which means that in the last 2 years, we have scaled from lab to having a pilot scale factory to finally having a commercial scale production around this materials. So as of now, we can produce these materials at industrial scale, which means tons of these materials can be produced, tons of this agriculture residue can be put to better use, which in turn saves water, carbon and water.
Have centrally funded 6 Center of Excellences. One is from DRDO, another one is from Government of Gujarat, another one is from UNICEF, another one is from European Business Trading Corporation, and many more. So we call it a finishing school, where we are encouraging students to refine their practical and laboratory exercises into some professional material. And that is how we are the complete ecosystem where we are encouraging students for their innovative ideas and ultimately to develop something for the industry also. We are catering more than 400 startups in the campus since last 4 years. And I am happy to share that all the students and the faculties, those who are having some innovative ideas and some novelties in their practices, they are being encouraged to develop something which is the need of the society.
So friends, this brings us to the end of yet another episode of Economic Sutra. I hope you enjoyed this show and how we are really becoming a nation of startups. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode of Economic Sutra right here in Sangsad TV.